a lonely child. Even though she was rich, she was very unhappy. Her father worked as an entrepreneur. Her mother was an alcoholic. She was a smart girl, though, but she hated that. She wanted to be like normal kids, but she couldn't. One Christmas, her parents gave her a laughing Jill in the box. When she cranked up the box, Jill popped up, and the minute they started to talk to each other, they became best friends. Due to this, Mary became rude to her parents, and Jill became rude as well. Jill would prank her parents, and Mary would be blamed for it. However, Mary would tell them it was laughing Jill. The parents, they didn't believe this, and they thought Mary was going crazy. This led and continued on for a while until Mary's parents decided to send Mary to a church so that she could forget all about Jill. However, ever since she left, Jill became an upset person and started losing her color. She was very colorful, full of rainbow, but after Mary had left, she became black and white. After a year, Mary came home for Christmas. She wasn't experienced, only to see Jill. She still remembered her because she pretends that she thinks Jill is ill and saw that she changed. Mary asked why, and Jill explained, but after finishing her explanation, Mary was killed. Jill saw that the mother had the gun that killed her and immediately snapped. That night, Jill killed the mother and the father and all the nuns. Appearance is similar to Laughing Jack. She was so colorful and vibrant, but shortly after, when her friend went to the church, Jill soon loses her color, it just started disappearing, and she became very dark quickly, bland and lifeless. She is the feminine counterpart of Laughing Jack, only a few minor details changed, such as Jill is much stronger and instead wears a frilly Victorian dress rather than a suit. When she was colorful, she was cheery, high-spirited clown, always loving to pull pranks on others and do other shenanigans. After turning dark, she was unhappy and quite aggressive. However, there was just a little bit of happiness left inside of her, but that was not shown very often. Her power, although not much is known about it, whether or not Laughing Jack is just as powerful as Jill, many think that Jill possesses similar skills to Jack, or even more so, more powerful. One particular trait that she makes stand out is that whenever Jill is in a combat situation, she always turns her hands into long, black, sharp objects. Nathan grew up with his twin sister Crystal and his mother. His father had left after the stresses of the family not wanting to cause any more harm by staying in this home. So due to this, his father also suffered from the same temperament as Nathan. Then Nathan had taken it upon himself to keep his mother, but mostly his sister, safe. One unfortunate day, him and his sister were abducted by a group of people who dealt with black market trades. Upon infuriating them, he was left to rot in a dark, cold cellar room, trapped behind a metal door, his sister well-being only in his mind, and the ever-growing anxiety between the two. His sister suffered a great amount of torment from the group, who were left to their own devices. Her rage turned into a gruesome death, just moments before Nathan could escape his own imprisonment. Once he realized he failed his sister, he gripped from being the protective brother she needed, fading away, and crashed into a hard delusion, already hearing her voice whispering in his ear, or as far as we know it, unable to accept her death. He locked that part of her death deep, deep away into his mind, and continued to believe she was still alive, but only if he takes care of a group that made him suffer, that made them both suffer. He didn't stop the ones in that house, aiming for his anger at everyone he believes to be part of that organization, enjoying the idea of watching those members die, only able to see them as those who had harmed his sister. Nathan appears very tall in stature. He stands at 6 foot. Nathan has long black hair, fair skin. He has one green eye on his right and a blue on his left. He wears a long white long-sleeve shirt, gray vest, gray sleeveless coat, black pants and boots. He also wears black fingerless gloves and a face mask that partially covers his face. His personality before anything happened to him, he was sneaky, a very quiet teenager, an introvert. He was quite protective of his family, especially his twin sister. When he goes berserk, he becomes a pure sadist, tormenting and killing people in very, very gruesome ways. His mind is like a vinyl record that constantly repeats the message, "Save my sister, kill them all." When he goes berserk, at times Nathan likes to play his mind games with those he stalks after knowing their roots and habits. However, there are times where he loses himself and acts on impulse rather than taking his time. Since Nathan grew up to love assassins, he would often practice sneaking around, normally just on his family. Later in his teen years, he would use this. He would use these skills to sneak out. And when he wants to be, he can be extremely charismatic, but most of the time he'd rather avoid all interactions. Nathan, the nobody, usually lives in abandoned places. His weapon of choice is a metal pipe, but occasionally he'll use what's lying around, such as a knife, here and there. He won't kill children. He doesn't see them as part of the organization. He loves sweets. When he's bored or nearing an enraging mindset, he likes to work out alone, just to help. And Nathan suffers from psychosis, intermittent explosive disorder. This is more of a genetic occurrence. He is very human. Females with green eyes, or close enough to the shade of green, tend to have an effect on him. Nathan loves and needs to hear the sound of something dripping. He often sits in whatever abandoned place he is staying and just talks to himself, or he'll stare out the window in peace. Sam Williams is the cousin of Sally Williams and the son of Uncle Johnny. After Uncle Johnny was arrested, Sam was adopted by Sally's parents. When Sam was 13, he was murdered by Sally as revenge for her parents adopting him. She considered herself replaced. Sally separated her soul from her body and given the same womb she had. At first, he hated everything about her and everything she did to him, but then he reflected. Both of them are dead. What was the point in hating her? She was the only family he had left in the world, and whom he could speak to. Sam acts as a big brother to Sally. He's quite intelligent and mature for his age, although being influenced by Sally's behaviors as childish. Does not like to stay alone for too long. He is a sentimental person, but with people who fall ill with various diseases like colds and they become serious. He's kind and polite. He's introverted. He's protective and very jealous. He likes to read books and play with Rubik's cubes and tries to learn to play guitar. Hanging out with Sally is one of his favorite activities. He liked to play football. His dislikes are being reminded he's dead, being called Sammy, being told he is cute or adorable, and sees his reflection. He hates it because he automatically remembers his hated father because of his high resemblance to him. He can fly, and he can teleport. He passes through walls and doors, etc. He also can lift any type of object when he is really angry. Since Sally hates killing and sees innocent people hurt, Sam is not canon to Sally's story, though. His place of death was the local park. Nick Vanell was once known as Nicholas Verdon. Nick's mother, Nancy, was a nurse at the same hospital that her husband, James Verdon, worked at. Due to their busy work schedules, the couple rarely had time to see each other. When James became ill, Nancy fell in love with a German man named Sieben Vanell and began seeing him on the side. James started to catch on about his wife's affair, but kept his suspicions to himself. After several months of this affair, Sieben left to go back to Germany, leaving Nancy pregnant with his child. Nancy died after giving birth to Nicholas, leaving James to raise him all on his own, to raise another man's child. Despite this, James tried being the best father he could to Nick. It was discovered that Nick had inherited an intermittent explosive disorder from his biological father. Time passes, and despite all odds, Nick grew up to be a very intelligent and charismatic young man. He was also asked why he didn't look like his father, and sometimes dodged his questions, saying that he took his grandfather's looks. James never told Nicholas the truth for fear of how he might react to this news. When Nick turned 18, he was given a job at a lab to be a lab assistant and help a scientist named Dr. Josh with his research. One day, he found the newspaper article on his real father when James was at work. Oddly enough, he stayed relatively calm about this and went on about his day. He went to his part-time job and everything was fine until he found a bag of cocaine, or flour as he first thought. Dr. Josh went to the kitchen to make some tea and found that Nick had moved this supply of drugs. Josh was the first surprised and worried, but he decided to simply get rid of Nick. Josh drugged Nick's tea, Nick drank it, and he fainted. When Nick woke up, he found himself tied to a chair. Dr. Josh came in and started interrogating Nick while he simply pleaded for Josh to let him go. Dr. Josh got bored of Nick's pleas and decided to use him as a test, a new serum he had been working on. When Nick was injected with this serum, his skin turned pale white, and the whites of his eyes turned black. Dr. Josh left the room, and Nick managed to escape and kill the doctor with a hammer before fleeing the scene. He grabbed the bag of syringes, thus beginning his life of crime. Now, Nick works as an assassin for hire, using syringes filled with poison to kill his victim. Nick's appearance, he has white skin and black shot eyes and light gray pupils. The attire he wears is mostly a dark gray beanie, a purple sweater, gray sweatpants, with a carry belt that contains pockets that hold two main weapons, a knife and a syringe. He also has black shoes and gloves. Nick mainly retains his original appearance, even though people have new alterations, such as his hair defines more waves and having straight hair. In addition, he now carries a strapped bag that carries most of the syringes equipped with knives. Jane the Killer, also known as Jane Richardson, started off as your typical girl, talk of the town who got it all. A lovely girlfriend, a job she enjoys, excellent friends, an amazing family, and a promising future. But in 2006, her world came crashing down with both her parents, Paula and Bruce, who were brutally murdered by the wanted murderer, Jeff the Killer, leaving Jane to have to work more and earn extra money to support herself and her sister. Flash forward to a few years later, the government chose Jane after 25 failed attempts at the test subjects had died, to hopefully be the one person that could survive the injection of liquid hate. Liquid hate is a risky chemical formula that could, however, hopefully power up a human's senses, overall abilities, so the number of serial killers could be slowed down. The subjects would experience violent episodes and homicidal tendencies for the first minute and 30 seconds, but appeared to be normal once the episode ceased. Jane, needing extra money to support her sister, believed that she was merely donating blood. She agreed. Jane provided to be the first person to survive this injection, which caused her peach skin color to become a pale white and her hair to become black, along with her eyes. Now Jane decides to use her newfound abilities to dedicate her life to capturing and taking the life of the man who ruined hers, Jeff the Killer. Her appearance before the injection of liquid hate appeared to be a blonde, ocean blue-eyed girl with peachy fair skin. After the transformation as a side effect of liquid hate, Jane's skin turned to a chalk white, and previously blue eyes and blonde hair turned completely coal black, retinas and all. Despite this, she still has a perfect 20/20 vision. She's mostly depicted wearing a black dress, high heels, and sometimes in black stockings. Other people illustrate her and sometimes depict her wearing black jeans, a black hoodie, and an undershirt, and black sneakers. Jane was once kind-hearted, spirited young woman who wanted nothing more than to make her family happy. After her transformation, she still managed to contain her caring and happy nature. But when she's angered, she's the most wrathful, ruthless, and violent person. However, this is only towards criminals, like rapists and serial killers, who, contrary to popular beliefs, is her actual targets. As unlike Jeff, she doesn't murder innocent people. Due to the effects of liquid hate, Jane gained supernatural abilities from the substance and increased strength of speed, stamina, healing, agility, and stealth. Other results include increase of alcohol, drug, tobacco tolerance, increasing her metabolism, running faster than a truck, athletes on steroids. She has accelerating healing, limb regeneration, vocal mimicry, and shape-shifting. Jane is also highly charismatic, and she's an intelligent young woman, often seen as seducing criminals into gaining information before killing them. Contrary to popular beliefs, Jane, Arkansas, the story about a teenage girl who got burned and attended the same school as Jeff, is not the original story of Jane the Killer, or the canon version. She's originally from Orange County, California. Now, her current location is not Van Nuys, Los Angeles, in the U.S. Jane also has several citizenships for other countries such as France, Britain, Iceland, Ireland, Switzerland, Chile. Her birthday is September 1st. She has a wife named Mary Vogue. It's literally impossible to have her a romantic attraction to Jeff, which she wouldn't have anyway, because he's a serial killer who murdered her family and ruined her life. Jane is also one of the few creepypasta villains who is not a murderous psychopath or demonic creature, since her own real goal is to kill Jeff. Nina started out as a normal fangirl of Jeff the Killer. Nina would adore the creepypasta character for nearly every quality about him and continued to read these stories. Chris, her little brother, would look up to his sister. They both got along quite well, with the occasional nickname Nina had given him, like Prince, for his appearance being oddly similar to a common fairy tale. However, after they started attending school, a few bullies had begun to harass Nina and Chris, with the first incident of harassment leading to Nina almost killing the bullies. Chris, obviously disturbed by this event, as Nina begins to explore her more violent nature, finding a link with her behavior and leaning it towards her idol, Jeff. Nina went to change into some fresh clothes. With this, the room began to be revealed. Nina owns more possessions relating to creepypasta character of Jeff, such as posters, clothes, notebooks, stuffed animals, dolls. One doll that she kept with her within her closet whispered that Jeff made so. After returning to school, she found a letter in her locker detailing how she was caught with the act of attempted murder, but instead complimented her for her extreme skill. No signature was found on the note, but Nina seemingly knew the culprit behind the message who gave it to her. During the second incident with her bullies, they decided the smartest decision was to make a quick kidnap, beat up Chris before returning him to Nina after lunging him out of the car. Frustrated and triggered by this event against her innocent brother, Nina refused to harm anyone as revenge, but informed her mother instead, so that Chris could have received medical attention. A few weeks to help her brother recover from his internal wounds. Another letter came upon returning to school, found by an anonymous writer describing their sympathy towards the matter that befell Chris, asking if they would be friends, causing Nina to blush with excitement. The day goes as usual, though. With picture day arriving, Nina was going and doing what many would assume, dressing just like Jeff the Killer. The day had passed by, and the next. The trio eventually found Nina and Chris and Claudia at the stage and had more harmful weapons than a knife. A gun, apparently. They chased Nina into an abandoned house nearby, leading to an almost fatal shootout, with Nina successfully dodging the bullets fired at her, escaping into a bathroom. But much to Nina's horror, Claudia began to mention their attack to Chris, which ultimately triggered to break Nina's sanity. Finding an iron rod to attack back, she first struck Yoni's head, causing blood to splatter everywhere. In the process, Malcolm and Claudia, shocked and disgusted by the terrifying look of insanity, took a few steps back before Malcolm became her next target. Nina and Chris leave the horrifying scene, but where later decides to find any bleach to mimic Jeff's disfigurement. To Nina's surprise and the audience's, Jeff finally makes his appearance into the scene. He informs her, whilst holding the bottle of bleach in her hand, that she has potential, needed to become a killer like himself. So at this instance, Nina begins to set up Lays as her screams echo throughout the house, leading to Chris and his mother rushing to Nina's aid. At their resort, a bucket of water was poured onto her to stop the fire from spreading across her face and body. Before the ambulance arrived to carry Nina away to recover from her wounds, she woke up with bandages all around her face. She walked to what she thought was a mirror and started to unwrap the bandages. She finished and saw herself in the mirror. She had almost white skin with a leather-like texture. "I'm beautiful, but not done yet." She punched the mirror in the corner and began to pick a shard of glass. She started to slit the creases of her mouth, just like Jeff. Her mother walked in, horrified at what she had just seen. "Aren't I beautiful, Mother?" she asked. Her mother screamed and started to run, but Nina was too fast. She took the mirror shard and killed her mother. A doctor walked in, along with 3 police officers. They tranquilized her and took her to an asylum. She woke up in a white padded room with a straitjacket. A nurse was next to her, stitching up her recent cuts. Nina tugged and moved, but was locked down. It wasn't long before she passed out. She woke up another time, but in a different room with no jacket. It was empty, with just one window covered by bars, an iron door, a small white bed. Nina had gone completely insane. She ripped apart the mattress, getting a spring and calling for help. A doctor rushed in, and she killed him the immediate time he ran in. She was fast, and she bolted for the door. People were so scared the door got malfunctioned, opened by the blood of the doctor's tablet, which controlled them. And Nina managed to escape the asylum. The first place she went was her home. She got there and beat on the door. It was around 3 a.m., so she took advantage. Her father came to the door and immediately was shocked to see who was at the door. His daughter, stitched up on one side of her mouth, white and leathery, standing right in front of him. He tried to shut the door, but Nina pushed him back, and he fell to the corner of the table and got cut by it and bled to death. Then she grabbed a knife from the kitchen and headed upstairs. She entered Chris's room. "Do you want to join me?" she asked Chris. He woke up and gently shook his head. She nodded and said, "Good," plunging the knife deep into Chris's chest, covering his mouth with her hand. Before her brother took his last breath, she whispered, "Go to sleep, my prince," before running out of the house in search for her one true love. Jeff. Nina's appearance is somewhat identical to Jeff, emulating his pale, white complexion and Chelsea grin. But instead of having burnt eyelids, she instead has sewn her eyelids open. In the canon story, she is described as wearing a fuchsia-colored hoodie, a black miniskirt, red and black thigh-high socks, and purple Converse shoes. Her hair is jet black and is tied into a high ponytail with a bright red bow. Her hair is in a single magenta streak, which she dyed herself. Her personality before losing her best friend, she was happy, a sweet social girl. When her two best friends died, she became quiet, less social due to the bullies. After finding out that who's Jeff the killer, she became insane and isolated herself. That change, going to the asylum, she started talking about unnecessary topics like a wall, and even going more insane. She finally broke out of the asylum and met Jeff, but that wasn't enough. To this day, she still wants to find Jeff. She tends to dress like Jeff to try to think like him. She'll do anything for him. Like Jeff, Nina also uses a knife to kill. Before going insane, she had light ivory skin and light brown hair. Her enemies are Clockwork and Jane the Killer. She likes the sight of blood and killing. She's a very somewhat underestimated creepypasta. It is much speculated that Nina knows about Jane the Killer not liking her. Ironically, her backstory is similar to her crush, Jeff. The original story was written in Spanish, and the English translation is the one you just heard. Cupcakes is a dark, gory parody of all the Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash ships. The story is centered around Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash, who decide to make cupcakes over at Pinkie's house. Upon arriving at Pinkie's house, however, Rainbow Dash realizes she will be part of the recipe when she is put to sleep and wakes up in Pinkie Pie's basement, tied to a stack of planks with a leather strap. The room shows numerous corpses and flesh from other ponies, and Pinkie Pie wears a dress made of skin from other Pegasus and cutie marks and their wings. Pinkie goes on to tell Rainbow Dash that she needs more of her special ingredient for her cupcakes, her cutie mark and wings, that is. So she follows and proceeds to cut them off, followed by the internal organs and her skull, at one point even causing Rainbow Dash to pee herself. Extremely painful for Rainbow Dash, but a normal day for Pinkie Pie. She constantly makes jokes as she dismembers her, like how she should be glad she was finally to have a friend helping her out, yet disappointed about her reaction and lack of toughness with dealing with this situation. Soon, she cuts off Rainbow Dash's head, cuts her in half, and glosses her teeth with Rainbow Dash's guts. Rainbow Dash soon dies. Pinkie Pie had no time to wait to make cupcakes. After all, she was having an old friend for dinner. Pinkie Pie appears as a light pink earth pony with a dark, hot pink mane and tail. Her eyes are a light blue, and her cutie mark appears to be 3 balloons. Pinkie is also seen wearing a dress made entirely out of dead pony cutie marks stitched together. She is incredibly callous, sadistic, cruel, and deceptive, also homicidal. She's intelligent enough to know various torture methods and putting on a convincing facade each day, which, keeping her twisted secrets hidden within this, confines her workplace. And another huge aspect of Pinkie's personality is an extreme sadism. She gets glee and incredible satisfaction and happiness when mentally breaking and torturing her victims. She relishes their screams and their pains and begs to get out alive. Obviously, she won't let them, as she knows her secret will be discovered. She doesn't appear to be a magical entity, although she's incredibly smart with anatomy and dissecting her victims, as she appears to be carefully removing the organs from her victims and silencing them using her special cupcakes, and also putting her friendly facade on in order to manipulate and trick her victims into falling directly into her trap. Rouge, also known as Heather Marshall, she was slowly losing her humanity after a miscarriage, which was then followed by the death of her fiancé, who died in a car crash. As years went by, she ran away from home after they threatened to take her to a mental asylum due to the fact she was harming herself for fun, or so they thought, though she just lost interest in everybody and became antisocial. After the tragedy, she currently lives deep in the woods as Slenderman's loyal proxy alongside the others. Her appearance is she's pale, has ivory skin, long dark brown hair, and dark brown eyes. She is typically wearing a dull dark red tethered hoodie, dirty beige cargo pants, a pair of clawed gloves, suspenders, dark gray bandana embroidered with the operator symbol that hangs around her neck, combat boots, and a white scratched up mask with a crooked, sinister grin. Rouge is also seen as the typical motherly / older sister type. She's often acting caring towards other proxies, and her views on them are they're her own. She's completely obedient towards Slenderman and tries to do anything he wants to make him love her. But in doing what she does because of her sadistic nature, while pride and joy in doing these things, she's still very aggressive. She won't attack strangers unless provoked. She's still very aggressive, though. She is rarely, if ever, seen to be remorseful and guilty after killing someone. There are even times where she's quite clever and witty and toying around with her victims right before she kills them. Rouge is very agile and fast. She is able to display many kinds of different aerial maneuvers whilst jumping and hanging from trees, as if she were skilled in parkour. Her methods of killing is quite odd, certainly different from the others normally would. She does it as she strikes from above, using her clawed gloves to climb trees, stalk her victims, and then finally jump down and pin them to the ground, clawing at their face. Ever since Dina was born, her father hated her and despised her. This was because she looked nothing like her parents, as she had black eyes. When she was born, her father decided to isolate her from the outside world, so nobody knew Dina was his child or was even alive. When she was 15, Dina wanted to go outside like the others would. She always dreamed it, but was trapped in her house, so she knew her dream could never be fulfilled in this position. Dina would visit a room where her father kept a long sword that had been rumored to belong to an angel who dropped the sword during a war, and the sword landed on Earth only to be passed down for a generation, and the sword ended up with Dina's father. Dina adored the sword so much, wanting it to be hers and always thinking about it and thinking it belonged to her, and the sword would choose her. So Dina proposed to her mother an offer to run away since both of them were miserable in the house. So the mother and Dina decided on Christmas Eve that she would secretly run away. Dina snuck out before she escaped and got the pendant that she was going to give her mother as a gift when they escaped. Dr. Clark, however, found out that people reported seeing Dina in the store and entering the house, so people then started to become curious, which angered Mr. Clark, and he wanted the existence of Dina to be a secret. Mr. Clark ran into the room screaming for Dina to run, when Mr. Clark ran in and threatened to kill Dina because of her sneaking out, and his yard beginning to become crowded with news reporters. Dina had her head slammed against a table. She was knocked unconscious, but she woke up in a dungeon that her father had built. Her father and Dina's cruel bodyguard began to make fun of Dina and mock her by calling her a monster. Dina, however, shot back and mocked Misha, calling her a very mean word for seducing her father, and he began to beat up Dina and stomp on her. Dina burst into giggles and laughter, even though she was being stomped on, and Dina then knocked Misha off of her with such intense strength Dina began to strangle her to death, calling her guilty when Misha took her last breath before dying. Dina goes back to the special room where the sword is. She takes the sword out of the case, planning to escape. She found her mother. Dina went to her father's office and found her mother, though. However, her mother was dead from being stabbed, and her mother was covered in bruises and wounds. Dina burst into tears, hugged her mother's corpse, and went and saw into the reflection of her sword. She saw the reflection of a person heading for her, so Dina turned around and slashed the person, who turned out to be her father. Dina chopped his legs off, and he had immense screams of agony and began to pull himself up. Dina laughed hysterically, crazily whispering and rambling on about being an angel and a judge for all humans. She repeatedly stabbed her father in the stomach, soon before chopping his head off, saying, "I announce you guilty." Dina changed into a new outfit and puts her mother's corpse in a suitcase, promising to find her a beautiful place to bury her. Dina leaves the mansion and puts it on fire, smiling before heading into the woods, further on murdering the lives of humans who she deemed guilty. Due to the fact that she never had been outside, Dina really didn't know how to be normal. The only thing that she knew was to care and to have shyness. After her mother's murder, she ended up having bipolar disorder and became violent thanks to her father. After meeting the nurse Anne, she started being less friendly and more aggressive, but thanks to meeting Bloody Painter, she started having feelings of love and kindness, yet she still struggled with the fact of her bipolar disorder and other things such as schizophrenia. In her story, she's only 15 years old. She starts dating the Bloody Painter later on in the story. She suffers from bipolar as well as schizophrenia. She was born with black eyes, and she has actually twice as much better of a sight than humans. And the full story was written by a creator on DeviantArt. Yeah.